Welcome everyone to Ignite with the beautiful, lovely Judith Rossell. Judith is the best-selling, award-winning author-illustrator of the middle grade novel The Midwatch, the junior fiction Spud and Snowball series, and the middle grade Stella Montgomery trilogy. She also illustrates picture books by other writers, has illustrated 16 books and written 16 books and illustrated more than 80. That's more than how old we are. And her books have been translated into 20 languages. Judith lives in Melbourne, Australia. Welcome, Jude.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay, so excited. So we met several years ago and we've not spoken for a long while, but I think there's always mutual admiration for each other's posts and pictures,
Of
and
course.
it's been a lot of fun. But I think we'll jump right into the questions for today's session. So as we all know, you are a prolific writer and illustrator, but I know that in another life you were a scientist. And so that's the only reason that I'm asking, in what ways do you find that nature and science capture your imagination as a writer or an illustrator?
I was thinking about this question today, and I think the thing I was a scientist, but it was a long time ago. I was quite young, and now I'm quite old. But I think what I brought from science into writing is I used to be an experimental scientist. They're the ones who actually do the experiments. And I was thinking one of the things I learned from science is this idea that you try things out. Like, say, you want to find out if this thing affects this thing. So you design an experiment and you do
Mhm.
it. And maybe you get no result. Maybe the result is that it doesn't have any effect. And that's disappointing, perhaps. But what I learned from science is that that's still a result. That's a
Yeah,
bit of data for you. This doesn't affect that. That's information. And I think that's the same sort of way I approach writing, which is you try something, and if it doesn't work, that can be a bit disappointing. But really, it's just information, isn't it? It's like, well, that didn't work, so don't do that, and don't try that again, but try something different. And I think that's not a bad way to approach writing, especially if you're like me and you don't really plan very well. So it's nice to think, well, okay, I've discovered that, that's not a good thing for me to write about because it's terrible. So try something new. And I think perhaps that is not a bad approach to writing when that's what I learned from science. Yeah.
oh, so have there been those sort of times that you're writing something and you know it's not working? And how do you know it's not working?
Well, it's hard, isn't it, with writing? With science, it's easier because you're measuring
Yeah,
something and you can see the number. With writing, I remember some advice about when you first write, you have to be very kind to yourself and you have to be
yeah.
very encouraging, like you would be to a small child who's trying something for the first time. You say, "Oh, you're so great, keep going," and then and then after you've written something, you have to be very tough and mean. And say, well, what's that like? So I think one of the most useful things you can bring to writing is to be a really tough critic of your own work, but
Hmm.
not at the start. At the start, you have to be very kind, otherwise you won't make any progress. But at some point, you have to be tough and you have to say, okay, is that any good? You try. What I like to do is I print out my story and I read it like in a cafe or on a train or somewhere else, and pretend I'm reading it for the first time. And I have to say, oh, what did I think of that? And with my book, The Midwatch, I wrote, it's a story about a girl who goes from one orphanage to another orphanage. And
Hmm.
to start with, I wrote a lot of scenes in the first orphanage. We met my character's friends and the nuns and the town, but she doesn't stay there. She moves to another orphanage, and that's where the story starts.
Yeah.
And I wrote 4 or 5 chapters, and it's hard for me. It took ages. And then I remember I printed them out and I'm like, oh, I'm going to love this. I'm going to read this and really admire it because it's so great. And then I was reading it on a train and I'm like, I don't need any of
Any of
this.
this.
Yeah, all of this is, I was actually quite embarrassed by how bad it was. I'm like, oh, I should have realized that none of this lives in my story. All of this can be thrown away. Mm.
But you know,
That was really
I was reading some of the pages of Midwatch, and I did see a difference in your writing from the Stella Montgomery series. So I can see because you're still, I would say, you're still a young middle grade writer, if I could say that, because you're just like two series old, I could say. So I could see the trajectory and how it's moved. So I think it's going really well. I really enjoyed what I was reading in
oh,
the
thank you.
mid-watch.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so, can you take us a little bit through your books? Because what I've noticed in your middle grade works, which is the Stella Montgomery series and the mid-watch, you have a lot of historical and cultural echoes. And for me as a reader, it's very interesting to see how you're mirroring certain times because you have you keep like harking back to like the Victorian age with the Stella Montgomery series, and with the Midwatch, I did read an interview where you said for you it was more like a dystopian world, but maybe another version or an alternate version, I think, of perhaps America, if I had read correctly, is what you had put down. So
Oh, yes,
could you
oh,
take us
sorry.
through that?
Oh, yes, the Stella series is Victorian, like 1880s, sort of
Hmm.
pretendy England. But the Midwatch I set in a version, not very accurate version of the 1920s, which I think is very dashing and exciting time. And I have this is where I can share this thing.
Yeah, I'm just
Oh
gonna
no,
check
I actually
my
can't.
settings. Just 1 second.
Um,
Um, for you to be able to share. Just give me one
thank you.
moment. Yeah, I think you should be able to do so now.
Oh, perfect, perfect. So let me maybe from the start.
Yeah,
Oh, can you see that?
yeah, we can see that really well.
So these are some pictures that I show children when I visit schools, and I talk about um, how the 1920s were. I mean, you can't really generalize for a whole decade, can you? But it seems like they were quite an optimistic few years in between
Hmm.
terrible wars, of course.
Yeah.
And people were building very optimistic buildings, very tall skyscrapers. And after the terrible First World War, of course, all these people felt, a lot of people felt sure there'd be no more wars because that war was so awful,
Hmm.
which gives it a certain poignancy for us, doesn't it? Because, of course, we know what's coming. But they didn't know. So they're building skyscrapers. I love this photo of the very famous lady photographer whose name is not in my head. I'm sure someone will remember her name. But this is on the top of the Chrysler building
Hmm.
on one of these stainless steel or chrome, it's probably chrome, isn't it? Chrome eagles that decorate
Yeah.
the building. And she had the job of photographing the building of this skyscraper.
Okay.
And I mean, this is the first time in America that women would have been able to have a job like this.
Yeah.
Also, no safety equipment and very,
I
very
know. I
shiny surface.
noticed that. Yeah. Her name is Margaret Burke White, I think.
I was going to say white, but I didn't want to say because I thought I was going to get it wrong. And here's I just show this to the children when I talk at schools because you can see those eagles on the top of the building there and how
Yeah.
terrifying it must have been
To
for
be
her.
on that, to take a
I
photograph.
know, imagine. I would be clinging to it and screaming. And these ladies are dancing the Charleston on the edge of a skyscraper. For
My
me, this is
gosh.
like, this is what the 20s, this is almost a sort of a stereotype of the 1920s, isn't it? Um,
Yeah, very much so.
slight, slightly dangerous, but kind of glamorous.
Hmm.
They look very happy, a little bit too happy. Um, and so when, I mean, the great thing about writing stories set in a particular time that's reasonably recent is that there's lots of photos, and I'm always looking at pictures to get ideas
Hmm.
and to get a sense of the time. So I looked at
Does
lots.
it affect your illustration or does it impact your story more?
Oh, both, I would say. I mean, they're probably more useful for the illustrations, but even for the story, it's like you get a sense of what it might be like to have walked down this street. When I talk to kids, I say, what would you hear? What would you smell? And what would you see? And questions like that are quite useful, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think that
And you
really
can
gets
imagine.
children, yeah, to kind of be present in that place and imagine everything sensorially. Yeah.
And what is the same as now and what is different from now is interesting, I think. So I look at lots of pictures. I think the 20s was an interesting time because it's that sort of, I mean, obviously every time has lots of new technology. We're not the only ones. But
Mm,
in the 20s, we've still got horse-drawn carriages and carts as well as motor cars. And it's that
yeah,
time where things were changing in the big cities in that way.
absolutely. Yeah.
And this is a picture from my book. So I try and sort of capture that vibe in my illustrations. Um, the idea of the city being quite an exciting modern place, I think. And then I got really obsessed with airships because they're so interesting. It's so sad to me that we don't have them
You don't have them anymore.
anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a very famous, obviously German airship visiting New York.
Yeah.
Um, it's a really extraordinary image, isn't it?
Very much
And they were
so.
huge. This is the Hindenburg.
But hmm.
And can you see how tiny the
How
little
tiny.
people?
I was just thinking that how tiny everybody looks. Like little
Yeah, just
specks.
much, much bigger than our biggest airplanes. And they sailed quite low in the sky. So it would have been extraordinary to see one come over the top of your head. Here's one parked on a ship. This is an American
Wow.
airship. And so they would park at these towers, and then the people. I don't know if can you see my little arrow if I wave it
Yeah,
around
yeah. I
like
can see
this?
your cursor. Yeah, we can see your
Oh,
cursor.
perfect. So this is where the people are, and the rest of it's all gas, of course.
Ah.
And so the
And
people, if they wanted to come out of this, they could. There's a little gangway here, so they would
yeah.
climb up inside, and then they could climb down here. So if this was a ship, they could be on the ship, and if it was a tall building like the Empire State Building, the airship could park at the top, and the people could climb right down into the building, which would be wonderful, really,
Oh.
and very cool.
And
And
you
of
have
course,
airships in the Midwatch, right? In fact, the
I do.
Midwatch, I think the Midwatch book cover also has it at
That's
some
right.
point. Yeah.
And they're weird because they're lighter than air. So this is
Hmm.
one standing on its nose. And they're very glamorous. They're very, very expensive.
Oh.
So, oh, there's one going on fire. Huh. I shouldn't laugh, of course, because it's
No,
not
no, no.
funny,
I
but
know it's
it was a
surprising that
long.
all of that is there. Yeah.
So this is a picture from my book. So I got a lot of
Yeah.
information, probably
Inspiration
more
and
information than I
yeah.
needed to put airships in my story. Um,
Yeah, but I think it completely informs what you're doing, and there's a sense of realism in whatever you're making, then, right? So it doesn't matter if you've over researched.
Well, I think as well, if you feel like you understand it, then you can play around with it. So in real life, the airships were huge, and as you can see
Yeah,
from the pictures, shaped like cigars. Whereas
yeah.
in my book, I made them quite small and shaped like goldfish, really, because I
Yeah.
just thought they would look cuter, and it's more useful for my story to have lots of little ones rather than three or four huge famous ones.
Yeah, but that's also because your main character's last name that is given to her is Fishbone, right?
That's right. Yes,
So
there's a little bit of a fish theme in the story.
yeah,
Small theme.
I noticed that like mention of eels and whales and now you have like the airships also that you call goldfish over here, which I love, but it's do you feel particularly drawn to history when you've been making middle grade fiction? Because for some reason in my head, I think of you when you're doing picture books as someone who has a lot of fun. Like when I think of Bog Trotter, uh, and like the real fancy that you have with that book. And then when I think of a midwatch and I think of Stella Montgomery, I keep thinking of you as like a historical middle grade fiction writer. And I know you said that it's very interesting for you to see how people receive your work because it's maybe different from how you perceive it when you're creating it.
Well, I mean, I'm interested in history, and I think that one of the things that works when you're writing history is that you can really empower the children because in Australia, in our culture at the moment, children don't really get to go on adventures
Mm,
because they have to go to school and be good. Um, if I take my nephews out, they have no adventures, despite, like, I keep stopping them having adventures.
yeah.
Whereas if you set your story in the past, you have a sort of more freedom to send them out to do scary things. But I think my history, I do write inspired by history, but it's not particularly accurate
Yeah,
history.
no,
I
yeah, no, yeah, that's why it's like historical fiction
don't,
is
because
what I think of
change
it.
something, if I want to change something from my story or put a few monsters in it, I'll just pop them in. I don't mind.
Now,
So,
I know you have a proclivity for that, I've noticed. Okay,
well,
so I'm gonna move to the next question. And the thing is that throughout your career now, you've worked in different capacities, right? So you've worked completely only as an illustrator. Like for example, one of the books I remember is "You Are a Star," where you've
oh
done
yes,
all of these beautiful, gorgeous illustrations that kind of hark back to how we are just stars and stardust and all of that. So you work in that capacity, and then you work as someone who's creating a picture book from scratch, both as a writer and as someone who's making the illustrations. And then finally, you have chapter books, which is your middle grade fiction, where if people haven't looked at Jude's books, she has illustrations on pages inside her novels, sometimes double page spreads. And sometimes she even does this really curious thing where she'll have little scribblings in the margins of the book, or she'll have like these little splotches, and I find that very delightful. Like I'm always like going through the books, and they tend to be inked or colored. I've noticed, like in Stella, I think each book had different shades. Like that one was blue and the other was green, and all of that. So what is that? What's that sort of journey been like, and what nuances do you include in each of these things?
well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think I definitely started as an illustrator, and people send you the words and you draw the pictures to go with someone else's story, of course. And as an illustrator, you are usually commissioned. So the publisher buys the story and then looks around for an illustrator to illustrate it. And you get paid at that point and you get a contract and you draw the pictures. And I did that for a long time. And it's a little bit different because when you're writing, you have to propose the idea. You have to
Hmm.
write it and try and sell it. And I think I find it a bit more scary to be a
Okay.
writer. As an illustrator, the work comes to you and you do it. It's not your responsibility how the story goes. You just have to make it look lovely or draw the
Hmm.
pictures that you think match the text. But when
Right.
you're writing it yourself, it feels a lot more exposed. You're sort of out by yourself saying, I think this is cool, I made it. And you're sort of opening yourself up for people to say, well, I hate that. And you're like, oh, but I made it. It's part of me. I made it. And that's a lot more frightening, I think, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I haven't, so I do illustrate other people's stories and I write and illustrate my own stories. I haven't had the experience yet of writing and someone else illustrating.
Hmm.
And I admire that because that's like you've written your story, which is part of your heart, and then you just put it in someone else's hands. And
Correct. But I
that's
think
a
it
bit
would be,
scary.
I think it would be more different because you're an illustrator. So I think like because like I write, but if I had to have someone make pictures for my works, um, I wouldn't mind it because while I sketch, I don't think I would ever be able to have illustrations to go along with the book. So I think I would be very curious to see it. Although I'm sure every writer has pictures and visuals in their mind.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
sure.
and yeah, but it's very different if you're an illustrator yourself and somebody comes on board to
Yeah,
add
I
bits
don't
of
know
yours.
how I would I don't know how I would cope. I mean, already since I've become more of a writer than I used to be,
Mm,
now if I get sent a text to illustrate, I do find I'm more a little bit more critical than I used to be. I try not to be because it's not the job of the illustrator to correct the text. But
correct.
sometimes you think, oh, just because I'm so used to now when I write and illustrate, I fiddle with them both at the same time,
Yeah,
and and it's quite. I have to remind myself, no,
yeah.
don't get involved. They wouldn't welcome the illustrator saying, maybe you should change these words around.
Yeah, because you have that whole creative freedom if you are creating a book from scratch, right? If you
Yeah.
feel, oh, something's not really working and I wanna change it up over here, or maybe I've put these particular lines together, but I want the illustrations to add on something that's hidden or that's like a little surprise for the reader. That's what I'm going to do. Uh,
Yes. And with the novels, it's interesting. Sometimes, occasionally, you have to add a couple of lines of text just so that the illustration appears on the correct page for it to work.
oh,
So you go, well, I just need two more lines of text, and then this picture can be on the next page, which is just a much better place for it to be.
I hadn't thought about
Um,
that at all.
yeah, it's quite when you're in charge of both, you have a lot more freedom, but
Yeah.
it's also a bit more scary, I think.
Yeah. I read in for the Midwatch, so it's also been nominated for a lot of awards, the Midwatch, and I
Yes,
think
it's
it's
been.
yeah. Please tell us.
Oh, in fact, I'm off to New York as we speak. I'm in New Zealand, which is
Yeah.
sort of on the way to New York from Melbourne. I'm on
Mm.
holidays, but it was nominated for an Edgar Award, which is the Edgar Allan
Then
Poe
oh,
Awards from the Mystery Writers of America.
that is amazing.
It's just shortlisted. They don't tell you who wins until the fancy dinner, and
Um,
so that's going to be extraordinary, I think.
yeah,
I've
of
never
course.
been to an event like that before.
That's
Um,
amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. I wasn't. I was. Yeah.
I know
I'm a bit anxious.
you haven't yet revealed it because I don't think I had read about it yet, but I keep seeing a lot of updates that the Midwatch has been nominated for a number of awards, and I can see why because it's also a story that's you're trying to create a world where just to give a quick little update to people who are watching is that the Midwatch on the outside seems like it's meant to be an orphanage or it's meant to be this sort of place which is very dire and things like that. But in the case of the story and what starts unraveling is that we discover that actually all of the girls are being secretly trained, right, to be able
Yes.
to figure out or fight crime or any sort of monsters or things that come up in the city. And I
Yes.
think that is also probably a real big pull for any of the readers, young readers who are picking up your book.
Yes. Yes. It looks like a terribly grim orphanage, but it's secretly a crime fighting organization. They operate underground, like literally, they're in a disused subway station, and they
Mm,
come up into the city through hidden tunnels and charge around solving
yeah,
crimes, fighting bad guys, and things like
yeah.
that.
You love your
Um,
hidden tunnels there in Stella Montgomery. It's
I
a
do
lot
love
of hidden tunnels and
I do love a hidden tunnel. The challenge for me is to try and write a book with no hidden tunnels and no monsters, just other things,
you know,
nice things.
I was when I was chatting with Jude, she told me that for her, when she creates her illustrations and even when she's writing her middle grade fiction, she likes to have it really visual so that it feels like a movie is rolling out. And I think and I'm so happy you would share that with me because that's exactly how I feel when I'm reading your book. I can picture everything so beautifully. Like in Stella Montgomery, I think Wormwood Mire is my favorite one because of like there's just so much of there's so many leaves and trees and like dangerous creatures and all of that that I just found it incredibly delicious and I loved it so much for the
Oh,
world
oh,
you
thank you.
created.
I think that's my favourite of the three as well. It's the middle one, in case people are wondering. Book two, I think, is the best one, um, actually, of that series as well. Yes, it's. I think it's a partly. I'm a very anxious writer, and I think it's partly just desperation. You think, well, hopefully, if they're not enjoying the story, they can at least enjoy the scenery. Like when you
Yeah,
go to a movie and it's filmed somewhere really beautiful or
yeah.
interesting, and it like at least you've got something to look at while you're reading.
No, but I think it really adds to the atmosphere, and you have a very, very prominent atmosphere across all of your books.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
you're welcome. So I'm just gonna ask in case anyone has any questions, you can put it down in the chat and Jude can answer them. There's also a friend of mine called Judith on this, which is hilarious. So for me, you're Jude and she's Judith, but that
She sounds lovely.
she is lovely, and I'm so happy to have you on here, Jude. So there's a question for you where it says, "Love your illustrations, Judith. Which illustrations or artists have influenced your work?"
Oh, wow, that's a good question. And there's so many, aren't there? And it depends on the time, like the day.
Yeah.
A lot of illustrators. I'm a huge fan of Edward Gorey. If people are familiar
Oh
with
my
his,
God, I love Edward Gorey, and it's such dark humor that it's hilarious. I love it.
it's dark but funny,
Funny,
but
and that's it. It's
really
really funny. Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw it, I'm like, I didn't know you could do stuff like this. He was so odd too. I read his biography, and he was an unusual man.
Yeah.
Um, but his work's amazing, so I'm a big fan of that. A lot of the older illustrators like that.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think of someone a bit more contemporary whose work I really like.
That's okay.
Um, a lot of the European illustrators, picture book
Yeah.
illustrators, are so amazing, aren't they? Sort of
Yeah.
pushing things. I think in Australia, a lot of our work is very unadventurous. We tend to be quite conservative,
Mm.
probably because it's such a small market. But
Mm.
over there, sometimes you look at picture books and think, wow, that's so mind blowing. The way they put things together and the sort of the scales and
Yeah.
different techniques they use.
I can think of a
Yeah.
contemporary that you liked because I think you had mentioned when we had met many years back. John Classen, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Because
I
I
mean,
think he
I love his illustrations, but
listen.
I really love his picture books so
Yeah.
much. Like the hat, I want my hat back.
Yeah.
That's not my
Yeah.
hat. He's just won the is it the
Yeah.
Hans Christian Andersen Award?
I had
And well
seen. Yeah.
deserved, in my opinion. If I was on the judging panel, I would have picked him. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think his work's really funny and really clever.
It's very,
And
very much
I
so.
don't want to brag, but we were on he when he was in Australia, we were doing school talks on the same sessions, and he had a go with my pencil. I had bought a fancy pencil, and I was
Yeah.
waving it, and he
Yeah.
said, "Oh, can I have a go with it?" And I went, "You have a go with my pencil, John Classen."
You
He
can totally
did.
brag about that. You can totally brag about that.
Yeah, I've never washed it. I've just kept in a special shrine with flowers.
So from Judith to Judith. So Judith says to Judith, I absolutely love John Classen, one of my favorite illustrators. Um,
Oh, he's
because
so good,
yeah,
isn't he? I remember,
he
I
is.
remember him saying he imagines his characters as really awkward actors on a stage where they sort of make
Oh,
contact with the audience, but not with each other. And
yeah, that makes
once
a lot of sense. Yeah.
they'll sort of stand there and look sort of
Look,
awkwardly,
yeah,
say their lines in an awkward way, which is
yeah,
such a funny aim to have, isn't it? But it works really well, I think. I like
yeah,
the one, the one with the fish
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
swimming, we're stolen the hat, and
Yeah, I know. So
it's
because I've
that's
seen, and I think there are like two or three books in that series, and what you're saying is true. It didn't occur to me till you voiced it that way, but there is that weird eye contact sort of thing going on with the way the characters are positioned, which is amazing. Um,
it's so funny, isn't it?
yeah,
And and then they get, the sort of the dark endings where, you know,
yeah,
whereas a
yeah.
lot of us wouldn't necessarily have our characters eat each other as at the
So
end.
maybe you'll be inspired to have some dark endings or some, but you
Yeah.
you have some of that though, like you did, right? Um, I
I
think
think
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say Stella, I think, has some pretty dark-ish things happen.
That's what I was gonna
But
say, the one with the tooth being removed.
yeah, and that hand. I don't know if you remember the first book.
Yeah,
There's
I
a
do, I do,
hand.
I do, I do, I do.
So many children have told me that that's as far as they got in that book. And I, whoa,
Really? Oh, they got
yeah,
scared. Oh, they
just,
haven't grown up. They haven't grown up watching the Addams Family then,
I
and
know.
thing.
So I feel like okay, but when I wrote the Midwatch, I wrote it during lockdown mainly, and it doesn't really have anything like that in it. It's an adventure story, but it doesn't have that sort of darkness in it, I think, and it just wasn't the time for me to write anything really upsetting,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Um, so since it is World Creativity and Innovation Week, and that's why we've been having all of these lovely talks, with the 15th having been Leonardo da Vinci's birth anniversary, actually, and the 21st being final World Creativity and Innovation Day. So since you have been doing so many creative things now for a very long time in your life, is there something that you like to share with people when it comes to creativity, or share with people for those who want to try something that they've never tried before but are maybe holding themselves back?
Um, I'm on holidays in New Zealand at the moment, and the other day I went to the Weta Workshops, which is a movie place where they make
Hmm.
sort of models and special effects. It's very famous because they did most of the Lord of the Rings stuff.
Yeah,
Like they made the chainmail and the swords and things.
yeah,
And I was so inspired by that, but I was mainly inspired by the way the people who work there are encouraged to do all kinds of things like crochet and macrame and drawing and making graphic novels, as well as the actual work of the studios. And what they say is just make stuff, make some things and try things. And I think it really inspired me with this idea of like, if you fancy something, or even if you're even a little bit interested, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you give it a go and just see what it's like and see what you can make? And like we were saying before, to try and be kind to yourself in the same way you would be kind to a child who was trying something for the first time. I think as adults, we're way too critical of ourselves in our
very
first
true.
attempts. I see this when I'm teaching people writing, is that
Mhm.
if people don't write something that they see as brilliant as a first draft, they get discouraged. And that's not that's not reasonable, is it? We should be really kind and encouraging to ourselves and say, try something, you will improve, give it a go. It's not really about the result, is it? It's about the process and how much fun you can have along the way.
It's such a wonderful thought to leave us with, Judith. Thank you so much. So this has been Jude Russell. She is an amazing writer and illustrator, and if you don't follow her on Instagram, you should, because you get to see all of the lovely work that she's doing, and you get to see the most amazing photographs that she takes, which are always so quirky, and you can see where her sense of humor comes from, because I think that trickles into all of her middle grade fiction. especially all her haunted house pictures. So thank you so much for being here, Jude. And
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
it's been lovely. And we have another Ignite talk closing the entire World Creativity and Innovation Week tomorrow with Dexter Ellis, who is a science communicator. So we have somebody else with some more science nuggets, and that's going to be fab too. So we hope to see you there as well. Thank you so much, Jude.
Thank
And wish
you.
you wish you all the best for the Edgar Allan Poe Awards. I will stay up to date and see what happens.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And lovely to see you again, of course. Thank you
Thank
for coming.
you. Thank you, everyone.